Okay, so this is my presentation on reflection. I'm going to look at different ways of reflecting and the different cycles to see which one is best for me to use. Okay, before we begin to reflect on the situation, we need to make sure that during the situation that we communicated well. Communication is a vital tool used both in the workplace and in personal life. Without it, nothing really works. We use reflection after a situation has happened to try and look back on it. Generally, we weren't able to evaluate on a particular situation effectively at the time because we normally have an emotional attachment to the situation. To effectively reflect on the situation, we must do it with a clear mind. So the best way to do this is to look back on it at a later date when we're much more detached, so we can look at it sort of outside looking in on the situation as if we were a complete third party, so we can be unbiased about views of the situation. Right, so there's many different ways of gaining information to aid our reflection, such as sort of peer-client feedback, questionnaires, and self-reflection. Certain methods are more effective with certain situations, but often they can be applied to anything, some way or another. In order to begin reflecting on the situation, it must first understand my own personal strengths and weaknesses with communication. I found it helpful to speak to someone who knows me fairly well to help me pinpoint these issues, because I think if I try to lay down my strengths and weaknesses, I might not be completely clear, whereas if someone else told you what they think it is, I think it would make more sense. Basically, I discovered that I don't take bad feedback too well, and often I don't want to listen to other people. When I've got an idea set in my head, I want to go through with it. If someone tells me, try this, I don't want to listen. I generally just sort of set straight to what I want to do. But I found that my strengths are that I'm actually quite good at, I think I'm quite good at giving feedback to others, and when I do give feedback, people have said that I'm quite clear and concise with what I'm trying to say, and help get the opinion across in that way. Right, so the particular situation that I'm going to reflect on in my reflecting report was when I was creating my Stone Pillow production. I was directing a particular scene, which I was actually acting in as well, so I had someone else film the scene and do the camera work for me. When I was filming it, the crew member kept offering me suggestions about saying, oh, this doesn't quite look right, maybe we should do it like this. And because I didn't want to listen to him because it was my film, I'm directing it, I just sort of dismissed it and didn't really want to listen, which ended up causing arguments about it and delayed the filming, and generally just basically ruined it, and it just took far too long. So I looked at 3 different models of reflection and compared them to see which one I think would be best for me to use for this situation. The first and simplest of these was Driscoll's model, which literally is made up of the 3 stages: what, so what, and now what. I thought this was quite simple and felt that if I did use it, I'd have to end up expanding on it more anyway, so I thought it would really be useful to use that one. The next one I looked at was Cole's learning cycle, which is similar to Driscoll's, but the second stage is actually split up into 2 other stages, so we can establish how it makes us feel at the time, and then reflecting on it later, because maybe our feelings were different from when it happened. And the final one I looked at was Gibbs' cycle, and this one's actually made up of 6 stages. I think it's much more in depth than the previous cycles, and it again breaks it down even further, and it gives you the option to think what you could have done to change it, to look at all the different possibilities, and then make an action plan of, if you had to repeat the situation, what would you definitely do differently that would make it easier for you. So after looking through all these different models, I tried to fit my situation into them, and I found that it fitted best into Cole's cycle. Basically, I tried to break it down, so the experience part was obviously filming the production. The what is the conflicting ideas between the crew. The so what was the director feeling other opinions didn't matter, and then the now what was the director reflecting on the situation at a later date. Having looked at it again, I actually think I will merge this one with Gibbs, because I do think that I could break it down even more. So because I can understand what my feelings were at the time and what my feelings are looking back at it now. So I think that is very important, because obviously with the emotional attachment at the time, your feelings are a lot different to when you look back on it. So I think I will actually merge those, so that probably having a 5-stage cycle with this one. So when I write my reflective report on the situation, like I said, I'll be using cold cycle, but I will be expanding on it. Hopefully being able to break it down in these small parts will help me pinpoint where it went wrong. Which, I mean, if I know exactly what point it went wrong, I can understand what I could have done that would have been different, and then hopefully reflect on it and work out which would have been the best situation to have which would have been the best thing to sort out the situation so that I didn't have the issue again. I speculate the conclusion of this report will show that I need to learn to be more accepting of other people's opinions and understand that even though it's my direction, my own opinions aren't always the best ideas, and I know everyone else that's trying to give me advice, they're not trying to take over from my work, they'll be just trying to give me advice to help me make my work as good as it can be.
I have one. Could you identify the 5 stages of your new model, please?
I can, yeah. So we have the first one, which is the experience.
Yes, okay.
The second one would be how I felt at the time. The third one would be reflecting on how I felt. The fourth would be identifying what I could have done at the time, and the fifth one would be creating an action plan for repeating.
Sorry, I'm just writing this down.
Okay.
So when you say what I could have done at the time, is there a right and wrong in that? Who says that? What? Okay.
Looking back at it now, I do think I was wrong. But obviously I'll find out when I do my reflective report whether that was the case, but that's my own
But
personal
in
opinion.
a general method, let's say I took your method on, in 20 years' time, it was more 2013, my little bibliography up there. How would I get that information about what could have been done in that situation?
I don't know, I suppose I'd have to try and rethink the situation in my mind and think, well, if I'd have done this, what would have happened? If I'd have done this, what would have happened? And then sort of compare those to see which would have given the best outcome.
Okay. So, you've got your model. You need to get data. You need to get feedback. What mechanisms are you implementing to glean that information?
I was thinking doing probably like a questionnaire, so I can hand out some to the people I've worked with, the people that have viewed my work and given me like verbal feedback, and to people that have seen the final production.
Right, so we're saying questionnaires. Obviously the same kind of thing, you need to be aware of how you use closed questions, open questions, range questions, or you use a variety of all three.
Yeah.
Again, it seems to me that you're, and I quote Sean, it's basically you're reflecting on action rather than in it.
Yeah.
Is that the best method for you, do you think?
I think it is, because I personally think that, like I said, when you're in a situation, there's a lot of emotional attachment, and often, well, most people know that when you're emotionally attached to something, you don't always think clearly and rationally. So I think looking back on it at a later date, you should be more aware of it.
But your production's done.
Yeah.
maybe had that model been implemented during that production, you wouldn't be saying quite the same.
Probably not then.
So there's always, it's important to keep perspective on both sides,
Yeah.
or even multiple sides.
Yeah, it's difficult to reflect in action. Is tough because it demands that all members of the group, production team, whatever, all have a very similar attitude. Some people are more professional than others.
Yeah.
Some people are, especially actors and actresses, are creatives. They see themselves as creatives. They're not open, you know, especially if they're well-renowned actors. Some of them can be temperamental.
Yeah.
So, in action, as Sean terms it, would probably be not a good method to employ. But if everyone is of the same kind of, yeah, I don't mind stopping, what do you have to say about this? Then such methods and mechanisms can be used like observation, which incidentally nobody's mentioned, which is a really valuable.
Sure.
No, use mechanisms for gleaning information, observation.
You can always record yourself.
You could do a piece to camera daily diary every day.
Absolutely, exactly.
That in itself, something happens when you put someone in front of a camera. Doesn't matter if there's an audience or not an audience, but if there's not an audience, I think the passivity of a camera is like talking to a counsellor.
Yeah.
They don't talk back, they sit there and absorb it.
Yeah.
So perhaps, maybe, and it's interesting that nobody's mentioned that.
Why would a counsellor not talk back?
Because they don't want to. In a way, I suppose they don't want to give their opinion. They just want to hear yours, understand it, and help you understand it. They're not trying to say. They're not trying to tell you what you should be doing.
So there's the personal reflection
Yeah.
aspect of it.
Yeah, I would have thought that's a
In
good
fact,
idea actually.
In fact, counsellors are trained to not even guide you. It's about, there are two levels. There is what they call cognitive therapy, where you just unload, there's all my problems. And then there is like a secondary level of therapy. And then that's about helping whoever it is to compartmentalise what's happening, but helping them to arrive at their own solutions. And that's quite useful. And I think actually doing a piece to camera at the end of each session actually may help.
Yeah.
So
I
what you're
think.
saying, reflective practice is personal counselling.
It has elements of it.
I think it's really important to reflect on those similarities.
Yeah.
One really last quick point, and it relates back to what Simon says about professionalism. You can design an agenda. Right, we are going to talk about this. You know, I've said it before, you know, people who go on military excursions and actually do conflict, they know that when they get back that they're going to have to discuss certain things from a certain agenda. And you can set that up, a rolling agenda at the end of the day, and if everybody agrees to go on the production and they know that they're going to engage with this, you might realise that they're going to, you know, dish out more information than maybe if you just go, oh, let's just talk about this.
So essentially, I think
Sorry, Jeremy.
what Dan's identified there is an advanced level of appraisal. Because when you go into a job appraisal, you already know what they're going to talk to you about. Performance.
And building on that, I just got to say it. The professionalism. You'd like everybody to be professional, but with that, and that's an ideal, you know. But with that, there's also this idea that all people are equal, but some are more equal than others. There is a hierarchy in professionalism, especially in television, which is very, very historical, comes from imperial times. You know, the producer is the top of the food chain. And you know, if you are, you know, key grip, gaffer, or, you know,
There's a certain level of expectation.
or the runner, well, you don't really
Backloader,
want
whatever.
to go, I don't really think you did a very good job today, you know.
Yeah.
So there's also that to be aware of.
But I would say that in most organisations, more senior echelons who are worth their salt, and I think in most organisations there is a framework where those people are seen or required to talk to the little people. How they may do that, whether it's a survey or whatever, that is...
It's the structured format, which you could implement.
Are we done?
Done.